Hey gang, and welcome back. This week we're going to look at a commander who's so vile, so despicable, so evil, that black as a color had no choice but to cast it out, forcing this commander to pick a third color. This is Derevi, Empyrial Tactician. I don't even know where to begin with this commander. Derevi costs 1 green, 1 white, and 1 blue, and we get a 2/3 flying bird wizard creature. Unlike many of the unique commanders created for Commander 2013, Derevi doesn't have an ability that gets bigger the more time she's gone from the command zone to the battlefield. In light of this, Wizards of the Coast decided to give her an ability that actually gets around the extra cost that you would pay that the other commanders want. We see this in her activated ability, which costs 1 colorless, 1 green, 1 white, and 1 blue, and says put Derevi onto the battlefield from the command zone. What this means is that no matter how many times Derevi dies, she's always going to cost 4 mana to bring her back. Clearly, because this wasn't enough, Derevi was also given a triggered ability. This triggered ability allows you to tap or untap target permanent whenever Derevi enters the battlefield, does combat damage to a player, or when any of your creatures deal combat damage to a player. At first glance, this might look like pseudo-vigilance, but it's really much more powerful than that. Derevi allows us to cast a spell in our main phase and then go to combat, swinging all of our creatures and potentially untapping all of our lands. Derevi is versatile, unrestricted by the commander tax, and in a great color pairing, allowing her to have ramp, draw, and good removal. But like all commanders, she can't do it alone, so let's look at some cards that'll help you get there. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm building a commander deck, I often have a theme in mind before I start building the deck. With the upcoming Commander 2017 products focusing heavily on tribal-based commanders, I thought it would be a great idea to go wizard tribal for my Derevi deck, but I realized that not everyone's here for a tribal deck, so I'll also be including Evil Adam's Derevi deck, which you've seen in action, and my tribal wizards deck, which I'll include in the about section below. Probably the strongest wizard to be included in Derevi is Willbreaker. This rare from Magic Origins might seem innocuous, but it's a very powerful effect for our Derevi deck. For only 5 mana, we can begin to use Derevi's triggered ability offensively by targeting our opponent's creatures to untap or tap them, but at the same time steal them. You can also consider running Aven Mindsensor, who now, thanks to Amonkhet, has basically become a bulk rare. With a powerful static ability that might not necessarily seem like it does much, Aven Mindsensor can prevent even fetch lands from finding basic lands, and also just happens to be a bird wizard to boot. Azami, Lady of Scrolls, is also a great card to consider including in your wizard deck, as she allows you to draw a ton of cards simply by tapping your wizard creatures. Better still, even wizards with summoning sickness are able to tap thanks to her ability. As tapping and untapping is pretty much what Derevi does best, Azami is able to draw you sometimes upwards of 10 cards a turn depending on the size of your board and if you've gone tribal. Speaking of drawing cards, Arcanus the Omnipotent is a great way to draw at least 3 cards a turn, assuming he lives that long. With the potential to draw so many cards in one turn, Arcanus is often the #1 target on our opponent's hit list. While not necessarily a wizard in the creature type, Yisan the Wanderer Bard has a special place in my list. If you've ever played against a Yisan the Wanderer Bard deck, you'll know that they often pack a lot of creatures that are able to untap the Minstrel. For only 3 mana, we get to put a verse counter on Yisan, then go find a creature that's cost matches the amount of verse counters on the Bard. This can easily get out of hand assuming you have enough mana, as Yisan's able to go from mana dork to threat to game-winning card, solely based on Derevi's triggers being stacked on him. Another honorary wizard in my deck is Sakashima the Imposter, because let's face it, there's nothing better than one trigger than when you're able to double it. With Sakashima on the board copying Derevi, every creature that hits an opponent is going to be able to allow you to untap 2 permanents. I don't think I really need to spell it out, but doubling the amount of ways you can untap things is always good. Plus, if there's something better on the board, you can always bounce Sakashima back to your hand and cast it again next turn. You're going to also want to include what I consider to be the strongest wizard, and that's Patron Wizard. Although he doesn't pump our wizards or give them any kind of valuable land walk, Patron Wizard is able to turn any wizard on our battlefield into a potential daze without having to pay any mana or returning an island to our hand. This means that in addition to being able to tap our creatures for draw, our little wizards are able to counter spells at no extra cost other than tapping them sideways. For instance, I'd say it's pretty safe to say you're going to want to run the typical setup involving cards like Court of Calling, Eldamari's Call, Enlightened Tutor, Swan Song, Swords to Plowshares, Worldly Tutors, anything that basically can either deal with a threat or find you a threat. For enchantments, I would strongly consider running Cryptolith Rites, as it allows your wizards to basically become mana dorks when they're not being tapped for draw. The amount of flexibility your creatures offer thanks to this and cards like Azami is incredible in this deck, and you're often getting so much value out of just casting a single wizard. A card you may or may not be familiar with, thanks to Evil Adam's incarnation of Derevi, is Reconnaissance. A card that seemingly functions as a self-only Maze of Ith, it does a lot more than it lets on, especially when you consider it's only 1 mana to invest and then it costs 0 to activate its ability. The reason this card is so good is you're able to activate it at the end of the combat step, after combat damage, after combat damage has been done, which essentially negates the negative part of this card and untaps your creature as though they'd never attacked. This means you don't have to use your triggered ability from Derevi to untap your creatures and can instead focus on more important things like lands and artifacts. An old card with a seemingly innocent ability that's incredibly broken in EDH when used correctly. I haven't seen that before. For artifacts, I think it's pretty much given that Birthing Pod in any green deck, as long as you're able to maintain a good curve, is a great addition. It gets even better as Derevi's potentially able to use it twice in a turn, doing it during your first main phase and then untapping it in your combat step to use it in your second main phase. A card that can also easily find its home in this deck is one that many people were drooling over as soon as it was spoiled, and that's Paradox Engine. Sure, it doesn't untap your lands, but frankly, if we're running cards like Cryptolith Rites or Earthcraft, you don't really care. You can easily tap a million of your creatures to draw a bunch of cards and then cast something as simple as Ponder to untap everything you just tapped. Simply put, Paradox Haze is a massive generator for any kind of value, whether it's through ramping, card draw, or simply is a great way to untap your creatures. For lands, Gaia's Cradle is incredible in Derevi deck, and frankly incredible in any green deck. Unfortunately, it comes with a massive price tag, so don't feel bad if you can't afford it. There are still some great and powerful lands that can be included in Derevi, and the first one I want to talk about is Gavany Township. Oftentimes, this land just sits on the field until the opponent's end of turn before your untap, in which case all of your creatures get a +1/+1 counter. Oftentimes, this one activation is enough to include it in your deck, but Derevi does even more crazy things, allowing you to sometimes get multiple activations in the same turn. This is a great help, as oftentimes our wizards have low power and are not very threatening as a result. Riptide Laboratory is a great addition to the deck as it allows us to save valuable wizard cards that we don't want to lose to exile or steal effects. Chances are you'll never use it very often, but it's great to have it just in case. So by now, you're probably sitting here and wondering, how does this deck win? Why did you go tribal? The answer is quite simple. I saw a combo and I really wanted to play it. The combo in question uses Laboratory Maniac, and I first became aware of it thanks to a Cobblepot list. It requires you to have Azami, Lady of the Scrolls on the board, Intruder Alarm, and Stony Brook Schoolmaster. It's janky, fun, and I love this combo, so let's go through it. So assuming you have the 3 cards on the field, basically what you're going to want to do is use Azami's ability to tap Stony Brook Schoolmaster. By tapping the Schoolmaster, you're able to create a 1/1 blue Merfolk Wizard token, which then triggers Intruder Alarm and untaps the Stony Brook Schoolmaster. You then do this as many times as you need until you find Laboratory Maniac, cast Laboratory Maniac, and then draw out the rest of your library. It's not the strongest combo in the world as it requires 4 pieces and basically your opponents to not have any kind of removal or responses to deal with it, but I think it's a great way to win in Derevi that doesn't involve Stasis or Hikori Dustdrinker. Well gang, that's my take on Derevi Empyrial Tactician. Which version of Derevi do you like more, Tribal or Evil Adam's version? Let me know in the comments below. Please be sure to tune back in every Monday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video with another one popping up during the week. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta or check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in part by support from my Patreons. If you're looking for a way to help the channel, please consider visiting the link below or in the About section. And as always gang, thank you for watching and please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.